Roar! Seeing the herb thief trying to flee, the ferocious tiger let out an enraged roar. It pounced like lightning, closing in behind Lu Changsheng, and with a savage swipe, its massive claws struck toward him. The sequence of movements was incomparably fast. Lu Changsheng's heart grew heavy at the sight. If that strike landed on his body, he would surely be stunned on the spot, and death in the tiger's jaws would be inevitable. He racked his brain for a countermeasure. In that fleeting instant, like a spark of lightning, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. His consciousness sank swiftly into the armor reinforcement skill, pressing the plus sign beside it. Yes, he had decided to take the tiger's strike head on. Since he couldn't avoid it, then he would pour everything into raising his chances of survival. As long as he could endure this one blow, he could borrow the force of the tiger's strike to be flung away, then immediately activate the earth burrow skill, and thus escapes safely. Armor reinforcement, level up! Lu Changsheng roared in his heart. At once, a stream of warmth surged from deep within his body, spreading rapidly through every limb and bone. The scales covering him shimmered with a faint light, even their thickness visibly increased. Bound beast, mountain piercing, armadillo rank, 1 skill, earth burrow, normal, armor, reinforcement, refined. Origin energy points. 3 Lu. Changsheng felt his defensive power suddenly rise by an entire tier. Even the skills grade had advanced to refined, though still considered a low-level skill. Every increase in rank brought tremendous improvements. The cost of 2 origin energy points was absolutely worth it. This gave Lu Changsheng much more confidence to survive the crisis at hand. From the moment he leveled up the skill to the completion of its evolution, less than half a breath had passed. Bang! The tiger's claw slammed heavily against the scales on Lu Changsheng's back. A thunderous sound rang out as his whole body was hurled forward, more than 10 meters. At once, his blood and qi churned violently, his vision bursting with sparks of light. But as he had predicted, even after taking such a strike, he did not faint on the spot. This was the benefit of the reinforced scales. Without the sudden increase in defense, he would have been knocked unconscious instantly. Earth burrow. Without hesitation, Lu Changsheng activated the skill. His claws dug frantically into the earth, quickly creating a pit that grew deeper by the second. Once it was deep enough, he slipped inside, tunneling sideways. Just as he disappeared underground, the tiger charged to the edge of the pit. It peered down, its face twisted in fury, its eyes blazing as though they would spit fire. Its spiritual herb had been stolen. Roar! The tiger's furious bellows echoed to the heavens, shaking countless leaves in the forest until they rustled violently. Realizing he was finally safe, Lu Changsheng let out a slow sigh of relief. He tunneled forward dozens of meters, then stopped in a hidden underground space and lay flat. That single strike from the tiger had injured his internal organs. Even with a beast's natural recovery, it would likely take days to heal. With enough herbs already in hand, he was in no hurry. He began to silently recover from his wounds. The next morning, the sun had just risen, casting golden light across the earth. After washing briefly, Lu Changsheng opened the system space to check last night's harvest. Several wild herbs, 20 to 30 years old, lay quietly inside, like glowing symbols, radiating a mysterious light. The ginseng stood out the most, its glow carrying a faint trace of red. He took each herb out one by one, holding them in his hands. But after a while, as expected, no notification came. Could it be because these herbs aren't old enough? Doubt arose in his heart. Then, he brought out the ginseng. The entire root, the length of a palm, was intact and flawless, smooth and glossy. A refreshing fragrance spread through the room, invigorating his spirit. Unidentified energy fluctuation detected. Absorb. At that moment, the system's clear voice rang in his mind. Absorb! Lu Changsheng silently commanded. A wave of warmth rose from within his body, and the ginseng in his hand instantly vanished. He glanced at his origin energy column. It had risen directly to 9 points. It seemed only spiritual herbs of a certain age could be absorbed. Ordinary 20 or 30-year-old herbs didn't meet the system's threshold. Spiritual herbs near 100 years old granted around 6 points. This minimum age requirement for absorption was still unknown. As for herbs beyond 100 years, that would have to be tested later. Lu Changsheng even speculated, aside from spiritual herbs, could his attribute modifier absorb other things as well? After a while, he withdrew his thoughts and stepped outside. Now that he had herbs in hand, it was time to exchange them for some money. His iron cloth technique was stuck at around 70% progress, half-baked and frustratingly stagnant. Only with enough fresh meat to nourish himself could his martial cultivation advance swiftly. It was said that martial experts could devour an entire ox in a single meal. The stronger one became, the more astonishing their appetite. The moment one stepped onto the martial path, it was fated that they would no longer be the same as ordinary people. Not long after, Lu Changsheng left the courtyard and headed toward the city. The entirety of Changping County was divided into 2 sections, the outer city and the inner city. The inner city was reserved for officials, nobles, and martial powerhouses. Ordinary folk had no chance of entering. The outer city, however, was where commoners, wealthy merchants, and even local bullies mingled, along with no small number of gang members. A true mix of dragons and snakes, a southern outer district housed the common folk. The northern district was the domain of wealthy merchants, influential clans, and gang leaders. The western side was a sprawl of slums, the filthiest, most chaotic part of Changping. The eastern district, on the other hand, was where shops and markets were concentrated, bustling with activity. This was precisely Lu Changsheng's destination today. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked forward along the familiar road. On either side were ramshackle huts, scattered haphazardly and in a state of near collapse. The air was thick with foul stench. Occasionally, one could see rat corpses lying dead in the sewage ditches. Pedestrians were few, each one hurried and numb-faced. When they glanced at Lu Changsheng, it was only for a moment before they lost interest. This world forces everyone to toil just to fill their stomachs. Lu Changsheng sighed softly. In his memories, he knew that the price of rice had been rising continuously for half a year. It was now more than double what it once was. At this rate, who knew when it would stop? For the common folk at the very bottom, survival meant little more than eating their fill. The price of rice directly affected the stability of the entire county. This in itself reflected the turmoil of the imperial court. Lu Changsheng continued forward. After passing through the outer city's central plaza, he entered the eastern district. His gaze swept across the surroundings. Compared to elsewhere, the eastern side was far cleaner. On both sides of the street stood rows of shops, each displaying goods, rice, flour, grain, oil, and cloth were sparsely laid out on the counters. The shop assistants yawned listlessly. After passing several grain shops, Lu Changsheng finally arrived at his true destination, Miao's apothecary. 4 large gilded characters were carved into the signboard, hanging high above. The pharmacy was neither too large nor too small, perfect for his needs. Lu Changsheng stepped inside. At once, he saw an elderly man in green robes standing behind the central counter. "What may I help you with, honored customer?" Miao Qingyun noticed the visitor and smiled faintly, a look that naturally evoked goodwill. "Does your store purchase medicinal herbs?" Lu Changsheng went straight to the point without circling around. "Oh." Interest immediately flickered across Miao Qingyun's face. The herbs in his shop were all collected by hired specialists who ventured deep into the mountains for high prices. It was quite rare for an ordinary person to bring herbs to sell. "What kind of herbs does the honored customer have on hand?" Lu Changsheng smiled faintly. He reached into his robe and drew out 3 stalks of medicinal herbs, placing them on the counter. A rich medicinal fragrance instantly spread through the air. He had already prepared these 3 herbs beforehand for sale. These herbs were entrusted to me by a friend to sell. If the price is fair, I imagine my friend would not mind building a new business connection. He spoke calmly, his expression composed. This is a Longming herb, about 30 years old." Miao Qingyun picked up a stalk of medicinal grass, studying it carefully. He even brought it to his nose for a sniff, and his eyes lit up slightly. After a while, he examined the other 2 herbs as well, then finally placed them back on the counter. "For these 3 herbs, this old man is willing to pay 2 taels of silver. What does young friend think?" His tone was unhurried, yet carried a natural air of confidence. The price he offered was already extremely fair. "Then let's trade." Lu Changsheng smiled and agreed without hesitation. Even if he went to a few other shops, the price wouldn't be much higher. 2 taels of silver were enough for him to cultivate iron cloth to the introductory level. What mattered now was quickly improving his own strength. To waste time haggling over a few coins would be missing the root for the branch. Miao Qingyun chuckled, took out 2 taels of silver, and set them on the counter. "Please, honored guest, accept it." As he spoke, he gathered up the 3 herbs. Lu Changsheng smiled faintly, pocketed the silver, and turned to leave. Once outside the apothecary, he strode quickly along the street. The flow of people on both sides was growing denser, the air filled with chatter, bargaining voices, and ceaseless noise. There were even quite a few wealthy ladies, leading their pampered daughters out for a stroll. This world was surprisingly open. There was no rule confining women strictly to their boudoir. Some young maidens of marriageable age, upon seeing Lu Changsheng, even dared to cast him flirtatious glances, causing the female attendants beside them to giggle and whisper. Lu Changsheng already had a handsome face, and after several days of martial cultivation, he carried a faint masculine vigor that only added to his charm. Naturally, this made some young women quite pleased with what they saw. With this kind of capital, if he chose to lie flat and live off a woman's wealth, he might very well succeed in fulfilling that ambition. Lu Changsheng let out a chuckle, dismissing the idle thought, and soon arrived before a butcher's stall. A burly man in rough cloth clothes, his body covered in fat, stood in front of the counter, cleaver in hand. "How much for that whole goat?" Lu Changsheng pointed to the carcass on the left. "1 tael of silver." The butcher lifted his eyes and spat out the words. Lu Changsheng frowned. The price of meat had risen again. The purchasing power of silver remained steady. 1 tael could be exchanged for about 1,000 copper coins, sometimes even a bit more. In the past, 1 tael of silver could buy 2 goats. Now the price had nearly doubled. Sigh. For half a year now, grain prices have gone mad. Naturally, meat has followed suit. The butcher explained indifferently. Give me a sack to carry it. Changsheng nodded without expression, tossing a tael of silver onto the counter. Right. Away! The butcher's face brightened with joy. He pulled out a rough cloth sack, stuffed the goat inside, and handed it over. Changsheng hefted the sack onto his back and headed off. With everything prepared, he had no mood for lingering. He returned home directly along the old path. After a short distance, just as he rounded a corner, familiar voices drifted into his ears. Big bro, we snatched over 10 taels of silver from that brat surnamed Lu. More than enough for us to live it up for a while. That kid actually dared not to pay respects to Big Bro first. Courting death he is. 2 men in blue short coats were walking down the street, moving farther away. Each carried a long saber, whispering to one another as they went. One of them was tall and broad, like a looming mountain, radiating oppressive force. His tiger-like eyes gleamed with killing intent. This man was none other than Zhao Erhu, a minor leader of the Sanhe gang. Upon hearing their words, Changsheng immediately halted. A flash of killing intent shot through his eyes. The head of this body had been smashed by that very man, not only stealing his recovery funds, but plundering his entire household wealth. If they learned he had returned from the dead, trouble would come without end. This man was already marked on his kill list, yet the Sanhe gang was one of the 2 great factions of Changping County, filled with experts. At his current strength, he could not afford to provoke them. Their hands stretched into river transport, brothels, and even the medicinal trade across the county, a vast network of power. For now, he could only lie low. Once his martial path bore some fruit, he would personally take revenge. Changsheng made his calculations in silence. Only after the 2 men had gone far did he step out from the corner, striding quickly homeward. Before long, he arrived in his courtyard. He butchered the goat, prepared a large pot of stew, and even sent a few caddies of meat to the sisters of the Fang family next door. Eating alone was never his way. The Fang sisters were astonished at the unexpected gift, but they asked no questions, simply assuming it was wealth left behind by Uncle Lu. Time flowed steadily. Soon, noon arrived. After eating and drinking his fill, Changsheng walked to the center of the courtyard and began to stand in stance. His legs spread wide, arms curved into the shape of a bow, gaze fixed straight ahead, his face solemn. Even his breathing carried an indescribable rhythm. This mystical posture was the foundation stance in the first illustration of iron cloth, the very root of the art. As Changsheng gradually entered meditative focus, the goat, meat in his belly began to digest rapidly, sending waves of warmth through his body. The weakness of the past days was slowly fading. This state lasted for more than half an hour, his face flushed with healthy color, looking far stronger. Tap, tap, tap. Just then, light footsteps approached. Feng Dao climbed over the fence, heading toward Changsheng. You've come at just the right time. I was about to resume training. Changsheng smiled slightly. Good. Feng Dao said nothing more, immediately picking up the wooden staff on the stone bench, ready to strike. He had witnessed all the changes in Changsheng these past days. From suspicion at first to growing belief, he even felt that Changsheng truly might succeed in cultivating. Bang, bang, bang. The staff struck heavily across the courtyard, while Changsheng clenched his teeth, silently enduring the pain surging through his body. With each cycle of his breath, warmth coursed through his skin, dulling even the sharpest ache. His mind gradually sank into emptiness. 72%, 73%. The progress bar of the cultivation art was rapidly climbing 5 days later. In the courtyard, bang, bang, bang. Loud crashes echoed all around as Fang Dao frenziedly hammered Lu Changsheng with the wooden staff. Sweat drenched Fang Dao's brow. His cheeks flushed crimson. If not for eating meat regularly these days, he might have long since lost the strength to swing. Lu Changsheng stood firm, legs spread, upper body bare, his skin covered with red welts. A frightening sight. Heat poured endlessly from his body, gathering at the crown of his head into a faint whirlpool of energy, mysterious and marvelous. He glanced at the panel. Martial art, iron cloth, uninitiated 99%, and satisfaction surged in his heart. In the past 5 days, the first goat had been eaten clean, forcing him to buy another. With the nourishment of such rich meat, his training progressed smoothly. He was now just one step from initiation. This session had lasted over 2 hours, yet still fell just short. Lu Changsheng did not tell Fang Dao to stop. He intended to push through in a single attempt. As the staff pounded relentlessly, torrents of warmth erupted within his body. His flesh began to swell, his skin toughening like oxhide. Who knew how much time had passed? Suddenly, a flash of clarity struck his heart. This is the moment! Break for me! With a roar, a surge of fiery energy exploded through his body, shooting upward and bursting from the crown of his head. Even the mist around him scattered away. Buzz! A resonant hum filled his ears, as though his very flesh was vibrating. The staff strikes no longer caused pain. Instead, they brought a faint tingling sensation. The skin of his upper body shimmered with a translucent glow, utterly extraordinary. At this moment, Iron Cloth had finally reached initiation. All his planning and struggle these past days had not been in vain. Chapter 12. 1,000 miles in a single day. Seeing the abnormal changes on Lu Changsheng's body, Fang Dao was utterly shocked. Brother Changsheng, you succeeded. When he saw Lu Changsheng give the slightest nod, his eyes brimmed with disbelief. Who would have thought that in just a few short days, Lu Changsheng had truly stepped onto the path of martial cultivation? Although the road to becoming a true martial expert was still incomparably long, this in itself was already astounding. Yo, should go back first. Lu Changsheng smiled faintly. He no longer needed Fang Dao's cooperation. He was about to experiment with the attribute panel, something he naturally could not let outsiders witness. I'll go back and tell elder sister the good news. Fang Dao ran out of the courtyard in delight, vanishing in an instant. Once Fang Dao was gone, Lu Changsheng opened his attribute panel. A blue light screen appeared in the void before him. Host, Lu Changsheng. Age, 20 realm, none martial arts, iron, cloth, initiated 1%, skills, none equipment, none status, good energy points, 9 bound, beast, mountain piercing armored beast, the green turmoils, symbol behind. Iron Cloth had lit up completely. Lu Changsheng's anticipation swelled. With a mere thought, he tapped the plus sign. As the energy points dropped from 9 to 7, a hazy sensation suddenly engulfed him. In your first year of bitter cultivation in Iron Cloth, you gained little. Unwilling, you persevered. By the second year, progress reached 20%. By the third year, 35%. After 10 years of arduous training, you finally brought Iron Cloth to the realm of minor accomplishment. As countless prompts echoed in his mind, Lu Changsheng slowly opened his eyes. A trace of daze flickered in them. In that instant, he truly felt as though he had trained Iron Cloth for over 10 years. To think his talent was this mediocre, just cultivating an ordinary technique to minor accomplishment, had taken more than a decade. Fortunately, he possessed the attribute panel. Otherwise, in this lifetime, at best he would only reach the skin refining realm. Lowering his head, he gazed at his own skin. It now glimmered with an ashen hue, its defensive power astonishing. At this moment, he had finally stepped into the skin refining realm. He clenched his fists. A surge of powerful strength rushed out, as though he could smash a bull with a single punch. Compared to before, it was as if heaven and earth had exchanged places. From this step onward, he was now a true martial practitioner, even the most ordinary. Skin-refining martial artist could easily defeat 10 robust men. If clad in heavy armor, one could cut down 100 foes, like a human-shaped beast. Within the army, such a one could already be promoted to a squad leader, thereby completely changing his fate. And this was only the skin-refining realm. Should he rise to higher martial levels, his strength would multiply manyfold. Some supreme experts could live for several centuries, roaming the void with nothing but their fleshly body, truly terrifying. This was one of the reasons why martial powerhouses were revered by the world. Yet from what Liu Changsheng knew, the skin-refining realm itself was divided into 3 stages: stone skin, iron skin, and copper skin. At present, he had only just stepped into stone skin. The ashen tone spreading across his torso was the sign of this stage. However, his limbs and head remained unchanged, leaving him somewhat puzzled. Could it be that this ironcloth art was incomplete? He lacked any orthodox martial inheritance. Everything had to be figured out on his own. After a moment's thought, Liu Changsheng glanced at his remaining energy points. Without hesitation, he added more. A wave of heat rose through his body, his flesh swelled, and the ashen hue gradually deepened into jet black. You endured a year of ceaseless toil, raising progress to 6%. 3 more years of diligence brought you to 23%. After 20 years of bitter cultivation, you finally brought ironcloth to the realm of great accomplishment. Once again, the attribute panel resounded with its cold, mechanical reminders. Liu Changsheng felt as though he had once more been thrown into another space, where he trained ironcloth for 20 long years, until the technique became as natural as breathing. A moment later, Liu Changsheng exhaled a mouthful of turbid qi, like a sharp sword piercing the air, cutting through the void before dissipating several feet away. Breath turning into sword, one of the signs of martial minor accomplishment. To think that in just a few short days, he had already reached this level. Lowering his gaze, he saw his skin now gleaming with a deep, black luster, profound and unfathomable. Its defensive power far surpassed his earlier stone skin. Not only that, his limbs and head had also taken on the ashen hue. It seemed that through the transformation of his body, the skin of his limbs had now caught up as well. He then looked back at the panel. Realm. Iron skin martial arts. Iron cloth. Great accomplishment 1%. Energy points 4 compared to advancing to minor accomplishment. It had consumed an extra energy point. He surmised that as martial arts progressed further, the energy cost would surely grow even greater.